What's going on, Dolphins fans? It's Connor from the Dolphins Dive, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the top defensive free agent targets the Dolphins can look to sign in free agency, which is coming up in about literally a week. So, without further ado, before I get into today's video, I'm just going to plug the merch, thedolphinsdive.com. You can get cool things like this Mike McDaniel McLovin mug or view more stuff out on our site, which should be shown on the screen right here. But now I'm going to get right into the video. If you watched my Miami Dolphins need video, you know the positions that we need to target, and those are going to be linebacker, corner, and safety. So I have a list of names for each of those positions. I didn't go into depth pieces. Obviously, we probably need to sign some depth in different areas, but these are the three main spots that we need to look to add to. I'm going to start with linebackers. So before I start listing off names, I'm going to kind of go over the prototype that we're probably going to be looking for. So the Dolphins have Jerome Baker already, and I don't think it's likely that he'll be traded. There is potential for that to happen. I just don't necessarily think it's likely. We also have Channing Tindall, who's like slightly bigger version of Jerome Baker, but they're similar in size, which actually was a little surprising to me. They're both kind of in like the 6 foot, 6'2" range, 225, 230 range. So the kind of linebacker we're probably going to look to add is probably bigger than that. Probably like a 6'3", 250 kind of guy is probably the ideal kind of guy that we can put next to one of those guys or have all three on the field together. But it's going to be a primarily middle linebacker. So the first name, this is probably most Dolphins fans' top one at linebacker, Tremaine Edmunds. Obviously a former Bill. There's still a chance he could be franchise tagged, but it's yet to be done. The deadline's in like 2 hours. I loved him coming out of the draft. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. Like, that is a ideal prototypical linebacker. That's kind of fits what we're looking for. Specifically, like I mentioned, we want long athletic guys, and he fits that like big 250 build. His projected contract is a 4-year, $44 million contract. And at the time I was making this preview write-up, I said I see that number being higher, which I still do, but I'm not as sure as I used to be because of what happened within the linebacker market with Bobby Wagner hitting the free agency market, as well as Eric Kendricks. Next guy I have on this list, Levante David. You can make a very strong case he's a future Hall of Famer. He's been one of the best linebackers this past entire decade. Was one of those key pieces when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. But he'd be a great stopgap. Help teach Channing Tindall. He's going to do his job at a good clip. He's projected 1 year, 9.7 mil. So you have a very good guy for a single year, help develop, and then maybe get younger, draft a guy in the third, fourth, and you're not banking on them panning out to have success. That's a potential route they can go. He's not necessarily built the way that I was projecting, but he's Levante David. It doesn't matter. He's a dog. Next guy, I don't know why I kept him on the list, but it's Devin Bush. Obviously, former Michigan linebacker, first-round pick on the Steelers. He's had an up-and-down career. He's had great moments and moments that have not been so good. But under new coaching, he could improve and be pretty consistent. But maybe it's a guy you take a flyer on, but I just don't think that's what the Dolphins will do. Predicted 1 year, $3 million, but like I said, we kind of have those kind of style linebackers in Tindall and Baker, so I think assets are probably best spent elsewhere. Another guy, Kaiser White, I think with the Eagles, played in similar. Actually, I think Chargers. Sorry, the next guy is the Eagles, but played in similar schemes. Nearly positive he played for Staley a lot, who's a direct disciple of Fangio. And he's had very good years in similar schemes. Projected big money at 4 years, 47 mil, 11.9 annual average. So honestly, that is not ideal. Actually, let me make sure. I'm blanking on this guy's team. So he was with the Eagles. I am not stupid. He went from the Chargers and Staley to the Eagles, who also ran kind of a match coverage style scheme. So once again, he's had great success in this scheme, and he, as shown by the projected contract. Actually, I read the wrong number. It's 2 years, 17 mil. That number I named was for the other guy, but still 8.5 per year for a guy that kind of, he's been good, but he hasn't been phenomenal. Next guy I have on this list, who I've already messed up the numbers, but whatever. I'm sorry for confusing people. TJ Edwards, very good size, had a solid year in a similar scheme. He was with the Eagles, who, once again, not direct Fangio copy, but a lot of too high zone match coverage, which is kind of the principles of Fangio scheme. But he had a phenomenal year. This is who I was kind of referring to a lot with what I was saying with Kaiser White in terms of the money. But he had a very good year, hence the projected contract being 4 years, 47 mil, 11.9 AAV. So, once again, that's a big number for a guy that hasn't necessarily had the longevity of proving that. For me to be comfortable giving him that big of a contract, I'd rather give that money to Tremaine Edmonds or Bobby Wagner or Eric Kendricks. But once again, he's a potential guy that he's shown success in this system. He knows it, so ''maybe look an eye out. Maybe he isn't as expensive as projection. Next guy I have here is Jermaine Pratt. Amazing size for the position. I'm nearly positive he's like 6'3", 255. He's a big boy, but he can move. He's been a key piece of the Bengals defense for the past couple years now. Once again, not a carbon copy of Vic Fangio's defense, but Lou Anarumo. Very similar in terms of playing a lot of zone coverage. I think there's a lot of match principles in that as well. So he's the kind of build that we're looking for. We need a pure middle linebacker who can thump, but can also is athletic enough to cover in zone. And Jermaine Pratt does fit that bill. Had that bad moment where he was calling out his teammate after they lost the AFC Championship game. But once again, perfect size and skill set for what the Dolphins are looking for. He is projected a 4-year, $42 million contract, which is 10.6 on average. I've got a couple more names. I'm going to try and speed it up. Zach Cunningham, very good size for the middle, no projected contract, so if you can get him for cheap, why not? I made a tweet about this next guy, Leighton Vander Esch, obviously the Cowboys, but he's got tremendous size. He's way bigger than I had thought. I think he's like 6'4", 250. He's pretty athletic. Would be a very good get, no projected contract, so once again, it makes you lead you to believe that it's not going to be that high. Next guy, Troy Reeder, solid size, has spent time with Saley, which is obviously a very similar scheme, so you want a guy that you can plug in, knows the scheme, will execute. There you go. Alexander Johnson, I believe, is a free agent, but Spot Track did not have that specifically, so I don't know. But he's a guy that was with Fangio in Denver, and I've been a fan of him ever since we played him because he was just all over the field. He's a big, long guy that's athletic. And then, obviously, two names I left off this list because I think when I was writing this up, they weren't necessarily available, but Bobby Wagner as well as Eric Kendricks. I don't know if they necessarily provide the size that you want, but they're both arguably top 5 linebackers in the entire game. If you can go get them, go get them. They're great players, would fit the scheme perfectly because they're very athletic and can still fit the run. Next run to the cornerback position. I spent 8 minutes talking about linebackers. That's on me. We obviously need depth at corner, but I don't think the Dolphins are going to look to spend top money just due to the fact of how much assets we already have sunken into the position. And this is also projecting that Byron's going to be gone, which I'm assuming. But what we'd be looking for in a corner is going to be solid size and good zone skills. So first guy I have on this list, which I could see being a perfect fit, is Bryce Callahan. He just made $1.2 million last year, so it won't be too expensive. But he's got experience with Vic Fangio, so you bring him in. You get depth, and you have solid veteran presence that knows the scheme and can help teach others. I think that's perfect. Kind of a similar signing. I know it's different sides of the ball, but to a Trent Sherfield or a River Craycraft, like you get a cheap guy that knows the scheme inside out, and you get great solid depth. So even if he's your fourth corner, if he gets his number called on, he's going to be able to execute. Next guy, Greedy Williams, high upside guy. He's dealt with a ton of injuries. He was a big name coming out of the draft out of LSU. Like I said, lots of injuries. But got very good potential just because of his athletic ability. He could be pretty expensive. I didn't necessarily get a specific number on him. Byron Murphy. Keep another Byron on this team. Why not? Young guy, shown flashes, could be a potential solid cornerback too. So right now I'm projecting, obviously we have Xavier. I think Kader Kohu earned himself a starting spot. Probably in the slot, but he could play outside. He did play a little bit of outside last year, but let's project Kader in the slot. So that we're looking for like another outside corner. I think Byron Murphy's the guy you can potentially take a flyer on. He's not going to be the cheapest, though. He's probably going to be in like the $8 million range. So I don't know if the Dolphins are looking to make that kind of investment there, but if so, he's a potential name to look out for. Next guy, similar to Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller. He's worked with Fangio. He had great years there. He'd be a cheap vet with experience and depth. Once again, exactly like Bryce Callahan. I think Kyle Fuller's a little better, honestly. So I think Kyle Fuller's a guy you could bring in. Not too expensive. He's going to be very good. And honestly, probably underpaid if we are able to get him. I really want to get Kyle Fuller. He's probably my top corner I want to get. Next guy's going to be Rocky Sin. I've loved Rocky Sin since he's come out of college. He was with Temple, and I just remember a lot of the pre-draft process. I love Move the Six podcast, and they would mention how he was like a wrestler, and he's a dog. He can tackle. He's a tough, physical young dude. He's projected 4 years, $43 million though, so that's a steep price average of 10.8 a year. Next guy is Trey Flowers, big dude. I think he's like 6'3", 205. But that length for the scheme is very good because it's a zone match-based scheme. So he's very athletic, but he's got great size too. He's projected 3 years, $34 million, which is 11.4 on average. So not the cheapest. And then the last guy I have here, which is very expensive. I don't know if he's going to get this big of a contract, but that's what SpotTrack had. That's what I use for all of these guys. But it's Emmanuel Mosley of the 49ers. Very good player. Similar scheme, obviously, with D'Amico. Different front sevens and how they operate, but in terms of the back end, there's some similarities. Projected 4 years, $66 million at 16.6 annual average. So that's a little too much for my liking, but I mean, maybe he's not that expensive and we have a chance for him. Awesome. But next is going to be safety. So safety's a confusing position for the Dolphins to get because we obviously already have Javon Holland and Brandon Jones, and I think you could be comfortable running those two out. But what a lot of the case people are making and what Vic Fangio's done in the past is he's had packages with 3 safeties. So there are instances where you could maybe put Brandon Jones in the boxes, which what I would project is he would try and put Brandon Jones in the box, have Javon Holland as one of the 2 high safeties, and he'd probably be looking to get another 2 high safety, which is why I think people are pushing the Jordan Poyer bandwagon so much. So I'm guessing if they were to go for 3 safeties, they'd want Brandon Jones in the box just due to his physical prowess, his ability to blitz, tackle, and he's not necessarily the best in coverage. So I think they'd want Holland up top, Brandon Jones in the box, and they'd want another guy to put next to Holland. So that's why people have been clamoring for Jordan Poyer. I like Jordan Poyer. He is a perfect scheme fit for that 2 high role. That's what Buffalo did a ton of. But I don't know if I necessarily want to spend all those resources on a 3rd safety because you already have 2 that you like. But like I said, he's a great player. He wants to come to Miami. He projected 3 years, $33 million. And like I said, people can pull salary cap out their ass. So if the Dolphins are going all in, I'm for Jordan Poyer. I just think assets can necessarily be utilized better elsewhere. But without further ado, next person, Jimmy Ward, spent time in San Francisco, so there's obviously the Mike McDaniel connection. But once again, similar kind of system. They're different. Once again, like they're not exact carbon copies of Fangio, but there's similarities in terms of how they operate in their coverages. He's projected 2 years, $15 million, which is pretty good. The thing with Jimmy Ward too is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he was playing in the slot this year, and then he was complaining and he wanted to go back to safety. And Kyle Shanahan's like, well, if you want to ride the bench, you can. So he's a guy that can play that 2 high safety, but he's also got the flexibility to play in the slot and help fit the run too. So that's a potential guy that I think would be a pretty good fit. Projected 2 years, $15 million, so not too expensive. This next guy, my go-to when we're going with new coaches, we don't necessarily know the exact roles we're going for. I like to just look at the coach's past and who he's coached before and who's available. This next guy fits the bill to a T, and he's phenomenal. Adrian Amos, obviously was with the Bears and then to the Packers. He's freakishly athletic, very good safety. He played at a very high level in Fangio's scheme, and he's a high-level athlete. Projected $20.6 million over 3 years, a 6.8 average. Once again, if we're going to spend money on a safety, I think that's a pretty solid number to spend, around $6 million where you're not breaking the bank. We probably paid Eric Rowe similar to that. So if you can spend similar money and probably get a better guy for the scheme in Amos, I think that'd be a good move to make. And this last guy I have here is just kind of a vet minimum guy that you could get for cheap, which is Deshaun Gibson. He spent time with Fangio. He just knows the scheme probably very well. And once again, you sign him for cheap. You have him as a 3rd, 4th safety. In worst case scenario, he has to play. He'll be able to fill his role to a solid degree. But that's all I've got for today's video. Comment down below who you'd want us to sign at linebacker or in general on the defensive side of the ball. If I'm going to name the best of both worlds, if I could just pick them, obviously money's involved. But for linebacker, I'd want to go Edmonds. Corner, I'd want to go Kyle Fuller. And safety, I'd want to go Adrian Amos. So those are who I want, but I'm going to have a whole prediction video of the Dolphins offseason coming up in the next couple of days. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below who you want the Dolphins to sign. Until next time, I'll catch y'all.